Hi, good afternoon. This is Lorraine, and I'm here with a group to discuss about the mental health issues of the Aboriginal peoples in Canada. So our group consists of Sean Wood, Nimi Isaac, Lorraine Palado, and April Monsalud. So what is mental health? Mental health. It is a universal condition that shapes the way we think, feel, and communicate. Everyone has the potential to be mentally healthy, and you can be physically ill but mentally healthy as well. Mental illness. Mental illness. It is characterized by alteration in thinking, mood, or behavior associated with significant distress and impaired thinking and functioning for an extended period of time. It affects people of all ages, education levels, income levels, and cultures. The symptoms of mental illness vary from mild to severe depending on the type of mental illness. It arises from complex interaction of genetic, biological, personality, and environmental factors. So what is the issue? Some of the most significant forms of mental illness in Canada are mood disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety, personality, and eating disorders. Individuals with mental illnesses may have physical symptoms and suffer from physical illnesses. A person's attitude or feelings are closely related to the way she or he experiences illness or health and may affect both the course of an illness and the effectiveness of the treatment. The field of mental health has changed significantly over the last 40 years. Who are the Aboriginal people in Canada? So the Aboriginals are the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. First Nation consists of 734,000 and the Inuit consists of 45,000 and the Métis consists of 292,000. This is based on the census. The concept of health and well-being among Aboriginals. First is health and healing stemmed from the spiritual power mediated by the good relationship with animals. Good relationship to the land was equally important for individual and collective well-being. Let's just growing. Okay. Next. The third one is the concept of healthy person common to most Aboriginal cultures emphasizes relations and connection to others. This sense of connections includes others within the family, clan, or community. Health and wellness is achieved when there is a morally, spiritually correct relationship with others in the families and community, with the ancestors, and with a larger web of relations that make up the world and that can ensure well-being for the future generations. Morally and spiritually correct relationship with others in the family and the community, individuals and collective difficulties as consequence of historical trauma. They have been influenced by the spirituality that emphasizes these principles of connectedness to natures and ancestors, harmony and balance, such as the medicine wheel, the sweat lodge, and the pipe ceremony. So the medicine wheel, it is a tool that represents the totality of human experience in terms of four quadrants of dimension, which is the mental, physical, emotional, and also the spiritual. Some Aboriginals are also knowledgeable about the popular psychology. So, what is the popular psychology? Popular psychology has promoted the value of explaining the individual's sufferings in terms of individual biographical events, particularly the importance of spiritual, psychological, physical, and sexual trauma as the cause of the later difficulties in life. Sometimes, or some find psychological approaches to mental health ignore the social origins and political dimensions of problems or give insufficient place to spirituality. Aboriginal people see their situation as requiring an ongoing process of individual and collective healings. Since many people never come for treatment service, utilization is at best only a lower estimate of the true prevalence of stress in the community. Mental health and illness. First Nation and Inuit communities experiences significantly higher rates of mental health problems than the general population. The Aboriginal people are more likely to seek help for mental health problems than other Canadians. 8% of all Canadians had consulted mental health professionals from the previous year, whereas the First Nation groups was as high as 17%. Factors affecting mental health of the Aboriginals. Historical factors and acculturation. Residential schools and 60s scoop. Also the socioeconomic factors and violence, sexual abuse. So what are the mental health challenges among Aboriginals? These are distress, anxiety and depression, suicide, problematic use of alcohol and drugs, historical factors, acculturation, family violence, sexual abuse and assault.
Let us see what are the mental health challenges. First is the post-traumatic stress disorders. The risk factors for the post-traumatic stress disorders include female gender, lower levels of income and education, divorce or widowhood, and being from an ethnic minority. Aboriginal people have lower levels of income and education compared with non-Aboriginal people. They are disproportionately ranked among Canadians struggling with poverty. Being female greatly increases the risk for post-traumatic stress disorder, with prevalence rates for women being almost twice as high as for men. This increased prevalence in females may be the result of increased vulnerability to injury due to violent assault, since the perpetrators are usually male and they have greater physical power compared to females. Child physical and sexual abuse among Aboriginal people is also very high. Poverty and living without a partner may increase their risk of experiencing traumatic event. Repeated exposure to trauma, family instability, and childhood adversity such as separation from parents, preventing and family dysfunction are cause of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now let us see what are the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Persistent avoidance of stimuli, exaggerated negative belief about oneself, distorted thought about the traumatic event, feeling of depersonalization and derealization. Now, what is depersonalization? This is a feeling of detached observation of oneself, and feeling of derealization is evidenced by a feeling of unreality, as if one were in a dream, or the world falls distant and unreal or distorted. Now, what are the symptoms of the post-traumatic stress disorders? Persistent avoidance of stimuli, exaggerated negative belief about oneself, distorted thought about the traumatic event, feeling of depersonalization and derealization. Now let us see what are the treatments. Post-traumatic stress disorder is treatable and recovery of health and well-being is possible. Therefore, it is important that individuals seek help when experiencing distress. Healing approaches available includes Western-based approaches, indigenous approaches, strategies that incorporate a blend of Western and indigenous approaches. Purely Western approaches to counseling for Aboriginal people have met with limited success, as they emphasize the individual over the collective, often ignore the Aboriginal history and context to the problem, and are not holistic. Successful healing models for Aboriginal people include a focus on emotional, cultural, mental, and spiritual elements of the healing process. One example is the cognitive behavior intervention for trauma in schools, which is for reducing risk for suicide and psychiatric disorders among American Indian adolescents. Next is depression. First Nation people experience major depression at twice the national average. A 1990 survey found out that 16% of the First Nation adults living on reserve experience major depression, compared to 8% of the general Canadian population. Of the First Nations people in the study who experienced depression, 26% said that depression interfered with their lives, compared to 16% of the overall Canadian population. Suicide rate is also much higher for Aboriginal people in Canada. Suicide is not thought to be the result of any single cause, but may occur in some individual as a result of complex relations between personal and social factors. Depression is more than a feeling sad or empty. It's a biological mood disorder that can be brought on by upsetting and other psychological factors or changes in a person's life or environment. Now let's see what are the causes of depression among the Aboriginal communities. Colonization and forced assimilation of Aboriginal people in Canada. The colonization and forced assimilation of Aboriginal people in Canada, they are considered to be the root cause of the elevated levels of social and mental distress found in many Aboriginal communities today. The removal of children from their families over consecutive generation is a significant factor in the development of depression in many Aboriginal people in Canada. The long-term effects of residential school experiences on family members, sadness from losing one's culture and heritage, higher rates of alcoholism and substance abuse, greater incidences of violence and sexual abuse, and living in poverty. Now let us see what are the symptoms of depression. Feeling of sadness, helplessness and hopelessness, feeling of worthlessness and guilt, changes in sleeping habits such as oversleeping or sleeplessness, unhappiness in previously enjoyed social and cultural activities, suicidal thoughts or past suicide attempts, changes in eating habits such as overeating or loss of appetite. Now, what are the treatments for depression? Antidepressants are used, cognitive behavior therapy, and psychosocial support. The next is the substance abuse. The use of illicit drug is a serious problem among the First Nations in Inuit and Métis. The illicit drugs, namely cannabis, cocaine, and solvents. Inuit community have been more impacted by these illicit drugs. Issues with drugs and alcohol are often not isolated to themselves. Violence, abuse, and harm to children in utero are among the effects of abuse. Youths are the most vulnerable to the temptation of drugs and therefore they are addicted to it. So what is the treatment? Health Canada gives funds to First Nations and Inuit communities to help heal from abuse from alcohol, from drugs and solvents. This Health Canada helps up in setting up and running treatment programs to help these Aboriginal people. Through the National Native Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program, Health Canada provides services to the First Nations and Inuit men, women and children who have or are affected by substance abuse or abuse problems. Health Canada is also dedicated to help First Nations and Inuit community address the health risk from the misuse of tobacco by providing information and resources for them to develop tobacco control programs that respect their traditions also. The next is the alcohol and drug abuse. Alcohol use is of great concern to people in the First Nations and Inuit communities. Survey shows that around 75% of all residents feel alcohol use is a problem in their community. 33% indicate that it's a problem of their own family or a household. 25% say that they have a personal problem with alcohol.
Hello everyone, my name is April and I will be discussing to you the community. Aboriginal communities suggest the importance of considering the nature of communities and the different ways in which groups have responded to the ongoing stresses of colonization, sedentarization, bureaucratic surveillance, and technocratic control. It is likely that the mediating mechanisms contributing to high levels of emotional stress and problems like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide are closely related to issues of individual identity and self-esteem. Prevention and intervention of mental illnesses in Aboriginal people. Ways that communities and community members can help someone suffering from depression. Strengthening families, improving early childhood development, improving economic safety measures for families, providing early and permanent learning experiences, enhancing and encouraging strong development in preteen years, establishing supportive, safe, violence free communities, promote personal wellness through community and school based activities, and host cultural events. The impact of mental illness. Mental illness has a significant impact on the lives of those it affects. This affects educational achievement, career opportunities, and the formation of personal relationships. Mental illness is often episodic in nature. The greater the number of episodes, the greater the chance of lasting disability. The impact of mental illness can be reduced by timely and effective treatment, strong social supports, adequate income and housing, and educational opportunities. Family plays a vital role. They are usually the primary support for the affected individuals. Treatment. Aboriginal people have a holistic view of mental wellness. Wellness means being in a state of balance with family, community, and the larger environment. Because of this, European models of treatment that remove the person from their surroundings tend not to work for this group. Culture and spirituality are the frameworks of treatment developed by First Nations and Inuit communities. Family and community have a key role in helping individuals regain their sense of balance. Effective treatment involves identifying the strengths of families and communities and developing programs that build on these strengths. You can't do it for us. You can only do it with us. Aboriginal communities are motivated to take control of health services and to come up with their own solutions for health challenges. This can create a sense of collective pride, which is a positive step towards boosting Aboriginal mental health. The treatment for mental illness. The treatment for mental illness in Canada has evolved considerably over the years. The goal is to enable patients to live in a community where they would receive extensive support. Short-term stays and outpatient treatment in the hospitals were necessary, creating a true system of mental health services, more timely access to support services, providing supportive housing, counseling, and vocational and other rehabilitation services. The voice of the community. Aboriginal communities suggest the importance of considering the nature of communities and the different ways in which groups have responded to the ongoing stresses of the colonization, sedentarization, bureaucratic surveillance, and technocratic control. It is likely that the mediating mechanisms contributing to high levels of emotional distress and problems like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicide are closely related to issues of individual identity and self-esteem. The culture. All cultures are in constant evolution, so that cultural and ethnic identity must be understood as inventions of contemporary people responding to their current situation. This is not to question the authenticity of tradition, but to insist that culture can be appreciated as a co-creation by people in response to current circumstances, an ongoing construction that is contested both from within and without. For Aboriginal peoples, two important arenas for this contestation and change involve the relationship of individual groups to pan-Indian political and ethnic identity movements, and the relationship of traditional healing process to cosmopolitan medicine and religion, as well as their appropriation by New Age practitioners. Our goal, a vibrant, inclusive Canada where all peoples achieve their full potential and shared prosperity. We are all one. Conclusion. Even though Canada is recognized as a country in which citizens enjoy a high standard of living, many health and lifestyle benefits are not extended to all Aboriginal peoples. It is crucial that more culturally appropriate services are made available to Aboriginal peoples in all communities across Canada. Community health nurses work as partners with vulnerable clients to identify client strengths, assets, and health concerns and to double up with intervention strategies designed to break the cycle of vulnerability. Thank you everyone for watching our presentation.